by Hot Shots. St. Louis is home for all the games, all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com. And all programming here on Sports Hub STL is brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours. The Cardinals, a 4-game sweep by the Mets for the first time since 1986. Baseball fans need no reminder of what the Mets did that year, but they just couldn't put it together this weekend in the Big Apple. A frustrating performance. Late in the game, they showed a little bit of fight, but the Mets pitching just far too dominant for the Cardinals at this point in the season. Stefan Caray, Joe Roderick here for you. Let's get your initial thoughts on the series as a whole and, of course, this afternoon's game.
There are just a lot of hitters right now that look very lost at the plate. So a lot of guys who just are taking really, really bad at-bats and just really bad approaches at the plate. And as a fan sitting there and watching it, it's really frustrating because we have seen what this offense can do. And right now, and it's again 1-9 on the road this year. It is really frustrating to watch some of these just attacks at the plate. I mean, the one that jumps out to mind, we talked earlier in the pregame show that you and I were on. We talked about Nolan Gorman yesterday against Senga, and today, I mean, Lars Nootbaar late in the game, just 3 pitches, fastballs right down the middle that, again, I mean, it's bad on the shoulders. And the Bill Miller, he seemed to have struggled a bit behind the plate today. We're going to see tomorrow. We're going to look tomorrow on Twitter, and we're going to see the ump scorecard, and you're going to see a lot of dots that are outside of the box and a lot of strike 3 calls that were out of the box. And for the most part, that went both ways. And we are going to see how much that affected the Cardinals more than the Mets in some of those big time spots. But the ones that Lars Nootbaar struck out to in that at-bat was at the 6th or 7th inning when he did. That was those were 94 right down the heart. And those you've got to get a better at-bat out of your leadoff hitter in those.
Right, and that was the top of the 7th inning. Something good did happen in that inning. We'll touch on that in a moment. But strikeouts as a whole were really, really impactful to the Cardinals. They struck out 42 times over the course of this series. That's over 10 strikeouts per game. You're not going to get it done against very many teams with 10 strikeouts on average per game. This was really just a game where you didn't see a whole lot from the Cardinals at the beginning of the year, right? The Cardinals at the beginning of the year that were grinding out at bats, early swings in the count. They were chasing outside the zone. And that's credit to the Mets pitching staff that has looked better than any pitching staff I've watched this season, regardless of whether or not I'm watching the Cardinals. 42 strikeouts against this team is difficult to do. But to your point about Lars Nootbaar, one of his calling cards is how disciplined he is at the plate. And when you have him struggling like that, seeing 3 pitches down the middle and not swinging, there is a bit of a cause for concern there. And I'm sure that that's something that will be addressed and assessed. Now, there's a whole lot of negative to get into, and I'm sure we'll see it in the comments. I'm sure we'll talk about it as we go on this post-game show. But one of the positives, and it has been a continuous positive, is Thomas Saggese. A 2-run double in the top of the 7th inning to tie the game at 3. At that point, you thought, okay, finally some momentum in this game. And then, just like in Game 2, when Brendan Donovan tied it in the top of the 9th, Mets came right back and scored to once again take the lead. And that's been sort of par for the course for the Cardinals, is if they get leads or get close, it almost feels like they slip away just as fast as they've been created.
Yeah, Thomas Saggese, again, they talked today. They showed highlights from Mason Wynn's rehab assignment down in Memphis today. I believe he homered in one of his at-bats down there, and saying that he is expected to rejoin the team in Atlanta. And Thomas Saggese, again today, I think solidified himself in having a spot on this team. We saw Brendan Donovan play outfield this weekend. And I think that might have been, maybe it was a case of who was available and who needed days off, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit if that was also a test to just kind of get him some reps out there, knowing that when Mason Wynn's back, Thomas Saggese's kind of earned a spot right now in the starting lineup. And if that's the case, Brendan Donovan's going to have to be either your left fielder or your DH. And we talked about it too before the game, that we both expect more out of Alec Burleson at the plate, and it just hasn't been there yet. Jordan Walker, a guy who again, robbed of a home run today, hasn't produced to the levels that you'd want to see him produce to. So none of those guys are earning their spots to start every single day, day in and day out. Thomas Saggese is. Thomas Saggese has more than earned a spot over Nolan Gorman to be that second baseman. And when you look at some of the other guys that are struggling all over the team, that Thomas Saggese, you plug him in there at second, you put Mason Wynn at short, and now Brendan Donovan is your guy that you just keep moving around everywhere and find other places for him, for the other guys to play, the ones that are struggling to play. I mean, Lars Nootbaar probably needs a day off here soon with the way he's struggling at the plate. So there's your left fielder. Jordan Walker probably is, if he's not going to hit, he doesn't deserve to start 6 days a week, 5 days a week. Nootbaar in right, Donovan in the left. Donovan can also DH. You have the options out there to move these guys around. Now you need to continue to give Saggese at bats and see if this is a fluke and see what happens when the book's out on him, or see if he's legit and he is that prospect that you thought you were getting when you made the trade to get him.
Yep, he was a Texas League MVP in 2023. The guy has hit the baseball all over the diamond for the entirety of his pro career. Now, that brings up an interesting point, what you were saying a moment ago about production versus lack thereof. This team was designed to give a lot of runway to young players. And that's certainly the case with Saggese here. He is a young player, maybe not one that has been talked about nearly as much as Walker or Gorman. He hasn't had that magnifying glass on him. But they've shown that they're willing to sometimes put some players that they were trying to get a better look at on the bench. Gorman is the prime example, in order to maybe give the team a better chance of success. Now, with that being said, with that in mind, if Saggese does stay on this team, and I am of a firm belief that he should, who's expendable out of that group? If Donovan goes to left, right, who is expendable out of that group that in your mind has to be the first thought you're not going to play every single day?
Well, so I mean, we already know. Okay, so are we putting Baker in that list too?
Well, considering he's a DH, I'm talking more about position players, because Donovan will have to fill one of those spots given the fact that Saggese will play second.
Then, I mean, Gorman is that top guy. I mean, Gorman already lost his job once and really only earned it back due to injury to Mason Wynn, being right place, right time with that. So I think right now you kind of have to look at it as I guess Saggese lost it to the Gorman injury first, and then the Mason Wynn injury timing out the way it did has allowed Saggese to stay up here for as long as he has. It's Gorman's the top guy then. Gorman's the top one that's losing the most playing time of anybody with Saggese performing the way that he is. I just think it's a case now of figuring out where all the other holes get filled with that.
Well, and a couple of Saggese's biggest hits in this series came against right-handed pitching. A couple of doubles yesterday, had a double again today against Buto, who's a righty, who they brought in pretty much to try and get Saggese, and on the first pitch, he drives it down the left field line. So he has that killer mentality. The point I'm making here is if you put Saggese at second, that means that Gorman will have to go to the bench or be the DH, which means that Donovan will have to play the outfield, which means somebody's spot in the outfield is also going to be impacted. And with all the talk about Jordan Walker and giving him that runway, do you think the Cardinals are comfortable enough with having him take a seat on the bench for a couple days to see how this team looks without him out there every single day? Because defensively, he's been tremendous this season in right.
I would think so. I do. I don't, but I don't know if it's a case of multiple days on the bench. I think you still could work, because again, Contreras is not single today. I mean, he's not crushing the ball. He's not hitting to the way you want him to. Burleson's on it. There are other options. The DH option, I think, is still wide open too with some of these guys. So I don't think multiple days, 3-4 days in a row on the bench is really necessary.
I think I agree with you on that, especially considering you've seen flashes of greatness from Walker, and that's more right-handed power that you're trying to untap. Remember, Walker was the number one prospect a few years ago, and I think they still have that belief in him, as they should. Major leagues is very difficult. It is. It's difficult. He's moved up and down the order, but he is hitting a very, very cold spell. And the majority of hits have gone for opposite field singles. They're trying to see if he has that power. Now, we'll see. Right? We will see over the next few weeks what the Cardinals' plan is. Is the Cardinals' plan to stick to, hey, this is an audit? Or is the Cardinals' plan, we're going to put out there the best team to win every single day? And I'm not suggesting that they're not doing that. They might just be running into some bad luck. But it feels like right now Thomas Saggese is one of those players that needs to be out there every single day, considering how he's contributed over the last few weeks.
I don't so I don't get. I mean, I look at this roster the way it is, and if you're building for the future, I still think what guys are starting that wouldn't be out there to win every day. This isn't a, if that was if you were building for the future and not looking to win every day, then I feel like a guy like a JJ Weatherholt would already be in Memphis, because and maybe even closer to the big leagues to see how he handles big league pitching. I think that you would have more of a case of that. The only one, and offensively, I don't think there's anybody out there that you could look at and you can say that they're not trying to win every day with the offense. That's more pitching side. I think that conversation is much more on the pitching side of things. And I think that's where the Michael McGreevy conversation comes in over a guy like Miles Michaelis. That's the only argument. That's the only argument I can make for them right now, as far as maybe they're not trying to win and maybe they're not building for the future, when you do have a guy who performed as well as he did in spring, like McGreevy, not up here on the big league roster. As far as the offense goes, there's nobody right now that's starting day in and day out that you look at and you go, God, why, you have this guy in Memphis. Why is that not happening? I don't see that with anybody on this team right now. That's the only one that I think we can be excited about would be JJ Weatherholt.
Right. I agree with you. And in no way am I suggesting they're not trying to win the games. I know for a fact they're trying to win the games. I know how much.
Right. And I know what you're saying too. Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's, that whole thing of the runway and building for the future. And, this was supposed to be the year of Walker and Gorman to spread their wings. And then Victor Scott kind of worked his way into that conversation as well, to where those guys are going to give you the best opportunity to win. We're not, this isn't last year when Matt Carpenter was getting starts, when Matt Carpenter probably should not have been playing as much as he was. And that you're not getting any of that this year. Wilson Contreras, or when they, Paul Goldschmidt, when he was just ice cold and they kept running him out there every day and he just didn't have it, that would have been a case like this. I don't get that sense. I mean, we have seen Wilson Contreras sit, I would say, a lot more than they thought they would have had to sit Wilson Contreras by April 20th this year, knowing that he could either play first or DH for you. And he's been benched for maybe 4 games already this year, probably due to performance reasons. I think that's showing that they're out there to win, and they're not going to put a guy out there who they might see as a liability.
I think it really is an interesting conversation, right? You mentioned AAA and having players that you want on the field from the AAA team. And that's not how this team's assembled. This team has a lot of good options. That's where the internal conversations are. It's, hey, we have this guy on the bench on the major league team. Why is he not on the field for the major league team? Whereas a lot of other teams, say, have that AAA stud that they're ready to see make his debut. There are a couple guys that are certainly close and put pressure on the front office, I'm sure. But they assembled the right roster for 2025. They just haven't quite generated the right amount of wins that maybe this fan base would like to see. Now, quick aside here, it's important to note that all programming here on Sports Hub STL is brought to you by DraftKings. And baseball season is officially underway, and it's time to step up to the plate with DraftKings Pick 6. Think of DraftKings Pick 6 as your fastball right down the middle. It's the easiest way to play for cash and take a shot at a big win. Just select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Pick 6 is available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri, and more. Cash in your baseball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports. For new customers to play, $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Another aspect of this weekend that I know you and I talked about plenty, not only in the pregame show, but off the side in our own private conversations, struggles with runners in scoring position was definitely a factor. There weren't lack of opportunities. The Cardinals 5 for 25 in this series. 3 of those hits came in that 5-4 loss. So you have 2 hits with runners in scoring position in 3 of the 4 games after you're swept by the Mets. We can't help but analyze that. It's difficult to get hits. There's no question. But runners on second and third, 1 out, not very many sacrifice flies. That's something they were doing extremely well during spring training. The situational hitting for a team that, again, hasn't been slugging the ball in terms of home runs, they're going to need to do that. They're going to need to have opportunities where you can get the ball in the air and bring home a speedy runner from third in order to scratch and claw your way back into games.
Yeah, and it's a matter of the contact and how many times did they strike out in those situations. You mentioned earlier, threw the number out there, 42 strikeouts in this whole series. I don't know if you dug deep enough to see how many of those strikeouts came with the runners in scoring position out of those 25 outs they made. It's, again, you saw the Mets, a few, they found a way to produce runs today. They found a way to make contact and produce runs. You take a look at that 8th inning before things really blew up in that 8th inning. It was a dribbler that Acuna hit that Gorman tried to bare hand, missed it. Sajacy was way too close. He missed it. Somehow a 20-mile-an-hour bouncing ground ball in the grass turns into a double for Acuna on that play. And then a real good pitch by Fernandez, a jam shot, bloops over the head. I mean, that's producing runs because you're not striking out. You're putting the ball in play and you're making things happen. And that's, it's as simple as that to score runs sometimes.
We keep talking about that 5-run mark. If the Cardinals scored 5 runs in every game of this series, and we know how difficult it is to do at the major league level, but if you score 5 runs, you guarantee win 2 of the games in this series. You tie at least heading into extras in that walk-off victory where Lindor hit the home run, and you lose today. So that number 5 is going to be awfully important to keep our eye on. This is a team that certainly can put up those numbers. Brant Brown, I think, has done a tremendous job. The offense still ranks in the top half of Major League Baseball in virtually every statistical category, but it would be negligence not to mention the struggles that they've had over the last 4 or 5 days against a really good pitching staff. So that's the other factor of this that I don't want to let get caught in the weeds, is that the Mets have had the best pitching staff in baseball, top to bottom, whether it's their rotation, whether it's their relievers. That has been their calling card. Even with Soto's struggles, they have pitched extremely well. But those are the types of teams the Cardinals are going to have to split series against if they want to get into this division. The Cubs are playing very well. The Brewers are playing very well. The Reds are playing well.
Did you see the Reds score today, by the way?
Yeah, it's like a video game for them. Everybody's hitting.
Reds currently, Reds beat the Orioles 24-2 today. 24-2. A 7-run third. 7-run third, a 5-run 8th, a 4-run 9th added to that. Milwaukee is up 14-1 on the on your brother's Athletics. So the NL Central, outside of the Cardinals, scoring some runs this weekend.
Yes, they were. Now, here's the thing. They're probably getting all their runs out of the way before division play. So that's the silver lining I'm sticking to. And the Cardinals are just getting ready to peak before a big series in Atlanta. 3-game series at Truist Park. Tomorrow, it's going to be Eric Fetty versus Spencer Schwellenbach, who has been tremendous for the Braves. His last start was his worst one, though. 4 2/3, gave up 6 earned runs. It was the first time this season that he'd given up more than 1 run in a start. So his ERA inflated to a whopping 2.55. Fetty has back-to-back quality starts, but the Cardinals lost in both of those. So, again, the Cardinals are getting quality starts. They just aren't winning in a lot of those quality starts. So the starting pitching's giving them a chance. What can they do in Atlanta to get back on track?
Are they facing Strider too in that series? Is he? Have you looked ahead and seen if he's on the mound?
Yes.
Again,
If they do well against top of the rotation pitchers, there's no.
They
denying.
do, and I believe that'd be his second start since coming back. Made his first start last week in Toronto. It's a matter. I mean, just not striking out, and you're going to go in there and you're going to face pitchers who are big on strikeouts. In this, I think you miss Chris Sale. I think he pitched yesterday, so I do think they miss him in this series. I just need to see higher contact rate now at this point. Throw all the approach stuff out the window. Just give me a contact rate on some of these and cut down drastically on these strikeouts to make something happen.
I think so. And I mean, this is a great National League battle. The Cardinals and the Braves, two of the biggest brands in the National League. The Braves starting to peak a little bit. They've played well over the last couple of games and have handled their business against Minnesota. I don't want to see the Cardinals giving in to a Braves team. I mean, for my own personal reasons, right? I grew up watching the Braves. My dad was there forever. And now that I'm with the birds on the bat 100%, it's going to be a whole lot of fun to watch this series and have some nostalgia of going to that ballpark. But seeing the Cardinals get that monkey off their back and getting their second win on the road, I think is going to be so important for them because I don't know if you're lighting sage at this point, but it feels like they need to play perfectly in order to get a win when they're not at Busch Stadium.
Yeah, it's getting, it's a bad trend to start the year. 1-9 is not a good look at the beginning, and there's no. I mean, they're going to Atlanta. They're coming home for the weekend against the Reds and going right back out. So there's no long homestand on the horizon for them. It is a quick home series and then right back. They're gone again. So they'll have to figure it out real fast, or they're going to find themselves in too deep of a hole to come back from.
A couple of pitching notes on this weekend. Cardinals got 2 quality starts, and all 4 starters allowed 4 or less runs. They were swept. Starting pitching did great. Ryan Helsley did not appear in a single game of this series. The Cardinals didn't hold a lead late in the game to provide that option. And Ollie Marmol did comment, no manager will put in their closer in a tie game on the road. And there is logic to that. But you would have liked to see Helsley come in, but his role is the closer, and I don't think they want him to deviate from that. I agree and understand that position. But this is a point where you wonder who's that late inning guy going to be. Ryan Fernandez certainly had his struggles, allowed 3 doubles, a walk, a run, 3 runs, 4 earned over the course of this series in the 8th and 9th innings. And with this bullpen kind of changing every single day with guys going up and down, what do you think about Fernandez here in this spot?
I think we will see a move. Fernandez back down. I don't know if that's Graceffo or Roycroft getting called back up. I don't know how long Roycroft has been down at the moment. If it's been the allotted amount of days that he is needed to be down before getting called back up, but it wouldn't surprise me if you saw Graceffo get called up here with Fernandez getting sent down and get some fresh arms up here, because you saw Fernandez again. He gave up the walk-off on Friday and getting roughed up a little bit today. So it's good to kind of rotate these guys in throughout the year. You know, you have you know that you have arms down in Memphis that you're going to use at some point this year. So don't let them waste away when you have a guy that probably needs a little breather.
Yeah, that's one of the disadvantages for the player of being a relief pitcher is unless you're one of those guys that's getting paid millions upon millions, there's a decent chance you're going to be up and down. But for the team to have that flexibility and to have some good options in Memphis is also great. We know what Fernandez can be. Maybe a time to clear his head down in AAA will help. Now, we don't know if there's going to be a move. That's all speculation, I'm assuming, but it would be interesting to see how they play this out, especially ahead of what feels like a very, very important series early in this year against the Braves.
Yeah, absolutely. It's again, when you look at that schedule coming up, it's not doing you any favors for how you're playing right now. You do get the off day on Thursday. That'll be much needed. We get to see our second Steven Matt start coming up here too. So we'll get to see how he does again in that starter role. And questions will be coming. Questions will be coming. Not only, we're talking here about Sajaci and with Wynn coming back and who gets sent down, But I think it was Katie Wu had the article today about Miles Michaelis kind of realizing where his standing is right now with the team and realizing, what he's providing or not providing for Ali Marmol right now. So if he's talking about it, how long before that conversation needs to be had, especially when Steven Matz is not, there's nobody else in this rotation that is struggling to the point where you can, drop them out. If Michaelis is the guy, what are the next steps there for that? And at some point too, do you want to see McGreevy get a start? So before this season is too far gone and too lost for you. So there are those questions coming up here that are pretty deep at this point that could really shape the way that this team looks May, June, July, and beyond.
I totally agree. It's not going to be the same team in April that it is in July, I'm sure, but it's a fun team. The fact that it garners conversation, the fact that there's something to talk about every single day means that this team is valuable enough to have that conversation about. And I think everybody's expectations for this team are higher than maybe how the record has presented itself in the early goings of 2025. It's not from a lack of faith. I think it's quite the opposite, actually, is that there's so much faith from this fan base that they're trying to see what this team can produce. And they were teased a little bit with a 3-game sweep over Minnesota, but have kind of struggled since. That series win against Philadelphia, huge. The series against Pittsburgh, where you gave yourself a couple of shots and started to see the starting rotation get back into who they are, was huge. The pieces are there. It's time to put the puzzle together, and I think that's the ongoing conversation going on in that clubhouse.
Yeah, you've seen the good on the offense, you've seen the good on the pitching this year. Be nice to see a week where they're both line up and see how that looks for you and see what that can get your record to. It's at some point for sure.
Well, I'm curious if we have any comments or questions that we can get to here on the post-game show. Or maybe it's been radio silence and everybody's enjoying Easter.
No, they're running through. It's just a whole lot of people that are just not high on this team right now. Just a lot of folks that are just, the season's lost already here at 9-13. So it's a lot of comments throughout the chat about that. So it's and a lot of conversations between themselves with that as well.
Wow. So we're dealing with almost like a gigantic market, right? And this is a really, really loyal fan base, and you love the passion, and there's no doubt that there's validity to some of the claims that are being made, or maybe there's not validity. But the truth is that the people are still talking about the Cardinals, and we want to see this team take that next step. And I think everybody involved will agree they will play better. They have to, and they know that they need to. And there are players that have the capabilities to do just that. Now, whether or not that happens in the next week or the next month, I don't know. But remember at the beginning of the season when everybody thought, hey, this team has no chance to pitch well, whatever, they're pitching great. And at the beginning of the season when last year they struggled offensively the whole year and came out swinging, hair on fire, okay, they can turn it on a little bit. Now, they've come back to earth a tiny bit, but that's just gravity, baby. You got to come back down to earth eventually. And I think that they can find it again. And Brant Brown and Dusty Blake and Ollie Marmol are working with this team night in and night out to make sure that they put their best foot forward.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's going to, we are on the cusp of possibly a very long summer if this continues the way that it is. And this is kind of something that you and I touched on this morning about the ebbs and the flows of a season, and looking at this team. I don't know if it was more so after the Pittsburgh series or after the Boston series, and looking at it and saying, this is a team that, could win 10 out of 12 or lose 10 out of 12. And there's no telling which way it'll go. And right now, this looks like a team, again, they're not getting blown out. We're not seeing this team just get embarrassed and blown out on a nightly basis. It is frustrating. It is really, really frustrating to watch the struggles that we saw. And this whole Mets series was kind of the epitome of that, where you you see the signs of a team that could have won a few of those games. The team that fought back and tied it up on Friday and lost in the walk-off. A team today that came out there and late in the game got into the bullpen and scored and tied it up off the bullpen of the Mets. So you see those flashes from this team that you see, okay, this is what they're capable of. This is fun again. And then they go right back around and they give up 4 runs.
Right. There is a maddening aspect to that. And I think that it begs the question, right? Would you rather your team be competitive or not? And there are a lot of teams out there that are not competitive, that are losing games to teams like the Mets by 7-8 runs before you can blink. That's not the Cardinals team. They're a scrappy, difficult team to beat. I don't think the Mets would say this was smooth sailing this week. I mean, the Cardinals put pressure on them. They struggled with runners in scoring position. They hit 200 with runners in scoring position this week. But if you get 3 or 4 more hits, depending on the situation, Cardinals maybe take 2 games this week, and you're having a whole different thought. Your team's at 500 if you win 2 of those games. Now, they get swept. Second sweep of the year, it happens. But hopefully they're getting it out of the way now so that it won't happen further and further down the line in the season.
Yeah, it's one of those, and again, you look at the upcoming schedule that they have to face these next few weeks, and it's again, and I'm sorry, I said Reds coming into town next. It's the Brewers that are coming into town next week before they then head off to Cincinnati, and then it's the Mets again. So that schedule in May, it's one of those you're playing a lot of teams that I think are in the same boat as you are for kind of figuring out what they have as they go along this year. A lot of teams that I think went into the season with playoff aspirations that are they'll still be around there at the end of the come August, September, but it's that you got to get through this month. You got to get through the opponents like the Mets, who you have to face again next weekend or 2 weekends from now. It's the schedule's not doing you any favors, and the 1-9 road record is something that is right now. I mean, that's clear as day is where the issues are. It's just not being able to win on the road for one reason or another. And it's one of those things that it's as of right now, can't figure it out.
Well, there's no doubt that the players love St. Louis, and they love being in St. Louis, both from a professional and personal stance. But a quick turnaround for the Cardinals. They play tomorrow at 6:15. Schwellenbach for the Braves. Eric Fetty for the Cardinals, who has struggled against the Braves in his career. Schwellenbach also has not had great numbers against St. Louis. So there's a big chance for the Cardinals to get back on track. What's difficult about this series is because you're going to play 7 in a row, and 3 of those games come after a 4-game sweep. So something within them has to click, you imagine, have to find it in order to stop the bleeding. And I think that tomorrow is, once again, just like every game before that we've talked about, is so important for them and how they address the early stages of this year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's again, you get a chance to go down to Atlanta, a team that looked like, they were struggling. You kind of looked at it and were licking your chops a little bit, and they went and had a real good series this past weekend. So hopefully you're not running into another buzzsaw of a team down in Atlanta who's figuring it out, and you're just letting a lot of these NL East teams feast on you this early on this season, because the Phillies, again, you were able to squeak out 2 out of 3 against them, but going and getting swept by the Mets, a 4-game sweep is just, those are rough to take. Those really are. As you mentioned, first time in 39 years that's happened with the 4-game sweep to the Mets. I know this is a team that is expected to be a World Series contender, and the pitching has more than made up for any of the offensive struggles that the media in that town thought there would have been or thought there have been this year. But 0 out of 4 is not a great look.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that everybody in that clubhouse would agree, and all they can do is turn the page and focus on tomorrow. But do you have any final thoughts, Joe? I know you have family around and it's Easter, and of course, I want to say happy Easter to you again and everybody at Sports Hub STL and everybody watching. Thank you so much for sharing your Sunday with us.
It's WrestleMania Day too, Stefan.
What'd you say?
It's WrestleMania Day too.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, is that more important than Easter?
Right, the Easter's done for me. Yeah, Easter. All my Easter obligations are done and over with. It's it's time to lock in for WrestleMania here in the next hour or so.
Well, I'm sure you'll have a whole lot to say about that. For everybody here at Sports Hub STL, I'm Stefan Caray, Joe Roderick. Cardinals swept in 4 games by the Mets. Try and turn the page ahead of a 3-game set against ATL, where hopefully it won't be a baseball hub or a baseball heaven for the Braves. Thanks for joining us. This is always brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours. And, of course, the postgame show by Hot Shots.